session was concluded. There's no action to report. And so we're entering the business section, and we start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And Ms. Felice, your background is the flag. So could you lead us?
Be happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Emergency procedures, I'd say for everybody who is on this meeting, take a look around, and in case of emergency, know the quickest, safest way out. Anybody who's on district property, there's no smoking anywhere. We have our items for discussion, action, which is section B of our agenda. And Dr. Gianni, I think, oh, there you are.
Yeah.
The first item.
Yes. I will take it from here. Thank you. I'd like the board to revisit our current extended quarantine period of 14 days, and DOH recommended 10 days for close contacts as well as travelers. When we discussed on January 6th, it was without the input from our principals, who have shared that those additional 4 days is making it increasingly difficult to staff our schools and keep our schools open. It is also causing confusion with parents. Parents are getting letters from the DOH giving them clearance to come back to school because of the 10-day requirement. However, our 14 days it does not permit them to do that. In addition, I surveyed Brookhaven school districts. I know the board knows that I'm on a Zoom call with the Brookhaven superintendents once a week. And 12 of 12 on the call do follow the CDC and DOH guidelines of 10 days. So as such, administration recommends moving the quarantine period for close contacts and travelers from 14 to 10 days, as recommended by the CDC and the DOH. And I offer that for the board's discussion and action.
And you're muted.
Please log back in. I'm muted.
No,
Ann. Just to clarify, this would apply only to people who've had to quarantine because of being in close contact with someone who was tested positive. Correct. Or who had traveled outside the state.
Yes.
And this does not apply to people returning to work or to school after having tested positive.
No, those are already 10 days. That has not changed. That's always been 10 days in our reopening plan, and has always been recommended by CDC. So that's always, that has not changed.
Well, I'm just looking at one of the attachments that was provided to us in connection with this recommendation. And it's actually from May 30th from the New York State Department of Health. And it says, coming for people who've been recovering at home, they need to maintain isolation for at least, and it underlines at least 10 days after illness onset, and at least 3 days, 72 hours after recovery. It goes down to define illness onset as the date symptoms began, and recovery is defined as resolution of fever without use of fever-reducing medications, with progressive improvement or resolution of other symptoms. So that would be what ought to be in place for people returning to school, either as staff or as students who actually had the virus. And I just think that we need to make sure that the reopening plan makes a distinction.
Okay, I mean, we could certainly be sure that that has that distinction in it with regard to that. Does the board have any comment on the 14 to 10 days?
Ms. Ancona?
Yes, I do. So when we started this, first of all, let's start with the Zoom call that you were on. I know that other Brookhaven schools still do have 14 days. So I don't think that all the school districts in Brookhaven Town were on that Zoom meeting, because I did take the time to look at some school districts last night. But a lot of them still don't even have their secondary back 4 days. They're still on a 2-day hybrid schedule. So there are also a lot of the schools that do have their children back are not breaking the 6-foot distance. And we do know of people in our own district that tested positive on the 11th day. So when we agreed to do this, the principals did say that when we knew that we were going to be short-staffed, and we had the principals in the meeting, they all agreed that we were prepared to do this, and they understood the ramifications of doing this. So now that we're seeing the ramifications, now now it seems that they realize how hard it is to staff. And I did check before the meeting coming on, and the CDC still has not changed their quarantine. Although the DOH has, the CDC recommends the 14 days. Now that we're going to be testing, is it possible, if we agreed to the 10 days, that they would have to get a test to come back sooner, between the 10 and the 14 days? Is that something that you're willing to do? Because I don't really see me.
A couple of things, Ms. Ancona. First, the principals weren't on a call.
I'm sorry, the superintendent.
Okay, but you mentioned the principals when they were on our meeting. We didn't talk about this topic at that time.
She's talking about an earlier board meeting where they
Where they
spoke.
came. We weren't talking
Dr.
about.
Jones, can you just speak up a little bit?
The guidance hadn't changed at that meeting, so I don't know how they could have spoken to that.
No, when we were just agreeing to go back to the 4 days, like we advised, there's going to be more people in quarantine. That, I mean, I know personally I went through this, and they understood and said that we were equipped to do the 4 days. And we knew that we didn't have a lot of substitutes. We knew that administration may have to be covering classes. I just don't see that, now it's a reality, and I get that it's hard and it stinks, and I wouldn't want to be, a teacher this time, but I also, we have to understand that we knew this was going to happen. Like we all 7 of us knew that they were going to be short-staffed.
I'm sorry, I don't recall that conversation with the principals and the board. But I do want to refer you to the document that I have attached from the Department of Health, which clearly indicates that the 10 days is CDC guidance. I don't know where you're getting the information about CDC guidance, but this
The
is
CDC website still does say.
Okay, well, the Department of Health reports to us that it is CDC guidance. And the third part, I'm sorry, I kind of lost track. I don't know what that third part was that you were mentioning.
Oh, where the districts that you were on the call with, did they mention if they were breaking the 6 feet distance and if they were 2 days a week or 4 days? Because I know a lot of the secondary.
Some of them are and some of them are not. Most of them are. Most of them are breaking it. Some of them are not.
And the attachment, since you referred to it, does say individuals must continue daily symptoms monitoring through day 14. I mean,
Sure.
Day 14 is on here 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, sure. So monitoring, but they can return in 10, and they have to monitor for the complete 14. And Mr. Piccini, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, there's some confusion last meeting. This went to the CDC guidance. The guidelines do say they recommend 14 days, But they go on to say that you should follow the guidance from your local health officials, which is Suffolk County DOH. So I think we're kind of mixing that up or ignoring that point. I think holding kids out an additional 4 days when it's clearly not necessary based on the health officials, I think it's kind of cruel right now, and we're hearing from parents as it is. Kids need to be back to school, and I'm sure there's no liability here, but I mean, just waiting for somebody to sue a school district for denying their kids, entry into a school after health officials say that it's safe to do so. So I really think we're way off base here again, and I think we need to reduce the quarantine time from 14 to 10.
Ms. Averda?
Sorry. I do think that when we made the decision to maintain at the 14, we were looking at that time of taking away the testing for COVID positive. And if I recall, at that one particular meeting, you had also stated, which we see across many, many districts, many families not necessarily following the guidelines, not waiting, not keeping their children at home, waiting for test results, maybe sending their children in symptomatic or potentially if there's an exposure at home. So in the majority's defense, we kept our 14 days because what we were seeing at that time was to protect not only our students that were in the buildings, but our staff as well. Because we were seeing these situations, and we still are. We are getting calls, and we're getting letters, rather, not calls, stating that students are being COVID positive on a day that they have been in school, whether or not they were tested that day, or maybe they were still in school while they were waiting on testing. So to our defense, our 14 days was there, and it was kept there out of protection, because we did see that there were not all families following what we have expected for them to follow. And it's for protection for our staff and for our faculty. I'm not saying to go against, I'm not saying that I'm going to vote any which way. However, I just want that to be heard, that we chose to go 14 because at that particular meeting, we also, that particular week, we asked Dr. Gianni how we were doing on staffing, and we were okay on staffing. So that's why the decision was made for the 14 days. So I want that to be publicly known. Thank you.
Well, and adding to that, as a board, I do disagree with Mr. Puccini's suggestion that there would be liability if we don't reduce it to the 10 days. I don't see that, because the board can be more cautious than even what is recommended. So I saw another hand up, Ms. Felice.
Thank you. Yes, also in my support of staying with the 14 days, the last time we were asked to consider it, was because we were also in many of our schools reducing, the 6 feet distance between people. So I felt like it was a happy medium that, okay, we had to reduce the minimum distance between people. So, okay, let's err on the side of caution with doing the 14-day quarantine. Now, I had circulated a memo for, I know there's many memos and articles about what is the best practice, but this one by pediatricians talking about how to open up schools safely did mention about using a trusted, party to analyze the data. And Dr. Gianni has been very kind to give us the data about the positive cases. And in that 1 week alone, from 21st to January 28th, on our board update, we increased student positivity rates. It went from 150 to 168. And then the faculty and staff went from about 50 to about 68. So we're still having a rapid increase. Now, I asked an additional question to say, because I suspected that this would come up again as things change. Well, what is our number of people that are being quarantined? And the number, to me, was astronomical. I mean, when I look at it, it represents 10% of our population, our student population, To me, that sounds high because I'm equating it to the positivity rates of cases of COVID in Suffolk County, where we were running at about less than 3%, and that's where everybody wanted to stay. And sometimes we were down at 1%, and then we escalated after Thanksgiving and the holidays to over 10 to up to 13. Now it's scaling back down. But if you look at the total number in the school year of affected students and teachers that were quarantined, it's 439 people that are affected. So how many people did we protect in that quarantine from getting COVID or spreading COVID? That's it. I would just like to trust the data or data. You say data, I say data. That we're getting so that we can make these decisions. And I appreciate that that we've received input from the principals, because after all, our policies and our actions have to be equated and evaluated by the people who have to implement them. And I'm glad we got some feedback on that. And we should continue to. So I'm still at a crossroads for where to go with this, because I think we're doing the right thing by giving those extra 4 days. I realize there's confusion between the what DOH is telling our families and what we are doing. But on the same hand, we still have a terrific amount of cases. And my final point, I'll wrap this up. What are we doing so well at Vern Critz that we could emulate in the other schools? Because Vern Critz has a remarkably low positivity rate and quarantine rate. So I'd like to know what we're doing so well over there that we could share that information with the other schools and look at where, which schools are highest and find out what are they doing there that we could help them improve upon. Thank you.
I have one comment, and that is in terms of the number of quarantines, if I understood you correctly, I don't think I have as much of a concern about the number of quarantines as you express. My concern would be, of those quarantined, how many of them became infected because they had been in close contact with somebody within our schools. And I think that the number, Dr. Gianni, isn't that four is what I had remembered was reported to us.
Four, and I can't say that that's attributed to the close contact either, because it could have been anywhere. I don't have any real data to suggest where it came from, but I can tell you four individuals on quarantine ended up being positive.
Okay. So, Mr. Piccini?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to confirm that because I might have misunderstood Ms. Felice. I think the numbers you gave out were for the numbers of quarantine, correct? Because I thought you said positive, that those were positive. So
No, quarantine.
Quarantine, not positive.
Quarantine.
So one of the things I had asked the board, I really believe we should be pushing out to the public and to the board on a weekly basis is what is our weekly, we could do daily and weekly positivity rate, because that's what everybody talks about in the news. So when we see these numbers, are they rolling numbers or what, keeping track of it? I think it would be easy if we could really just, compare the percentages, especially because I thought I heard, 10% number, and that must have been quarantine, because I don't believe we've ever really come close to the community positivity rate from infections in our schools. If I'm understanding correctly, we're actually pretty low compared to the community. Am I wrong about that, Dr. Gianni?
No, you're right, but it's kind of impossible for us to give a percent positive the way the state reports it, because the way it's reported is based on the number tested. So while I can tell you who tested positive based on reports to me, I don't know how many people tested. So I can't
probably,
put a percent positive number out as the state does.
Couldn't we compare that number to the number quarantined at the very least, or the numbers of infected versus even our school community? Because you're right, it is, because basically, to your point, when the county or the, puts out, a local community puts out their numbers, that's versus, that positivity rate is versus tested. If it was versus population, it would be a very low number. But, I don't know. I just think the way we're analyzing, we're just throwing numbers out there, and I think we're leaving it up to individuals to really disseminate it and understand it. And to me, it just seems a percentage would, if we could figure it out, would just be a little bit easier, and put some people at ease.
I did look at it, but you got to remember, so when you look at those tested positive and even those quarantined, what do you compare it to? The only thing I have it to compare it to is the population. Our population is not changing. So every week, that percentage is going to increase because I don't have anything to go against. Whereas if I had that tested number, I could give a true percent positive.
Sure.
We did look at it, and by all means, if you
No, I get it. It makes sense. I didn't think of it that way. I guess the follow-up to that, I guess, then is, can we look at the percentages, or even can we get when we quarantine a whole classroom because of close contact, can we get a weekly report on how many we've quarantined have actually been positive?
That's what
we could do that. I mean, right now, the number's 4, it hasn't changed.
You're saying 4 district-wide?
Yeah, I'm saying 4 district-wide.
Positive versus all of the...
Positive of those quarantined from the district, 4 have tested positive.
I mean, that's kind of encouraging data to me.
Yeah, that's really good data, I think.
And I think it kind of, for me, it kind of cements the fact that I believe kids are safer in school from the virus than they are out, because we know it's coming from outside. I don't know. I just, the last point I get, sometimes I think we really need to, I know for me, there's a lot of parents who this, places an incredible burden on by extending that quarantine 4 days, whether it's paying for childcare, finding childcare, being able to work. So again, I'm firmly in support of reducing it to 10 days.
I'm just looking at it from the child's point of view. And right now, it would be the difference of 4 days would result in 2 days of missed school, because we've got Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
I know, but I don't know that we can really make that determination for an individual family of what's a hardship for them 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or 4 days. I get your point, but to just say it's just 2 more days, when people are struggling dealing with this to begin with, and everything else is going on. I mean, because we talk about reports coming out. Child psychologist today put out a report on the increase in suicide rate amongst school-age children due to the pandemic. So to me,
Well,
it just seems
the
foolish.
bottom line is that from the minute that we shut down last spring, we've known that eventually we want to get back to full time the way we were before last spring, only better. And it's been done, in stages. And I think part of the benefit of doing it in stages is that we have not seen spreader events within the school, as shown by the 4 positive cases that were found among people who had to quarantine. So to the extent I think we've been rewarded by our caution and by the recommendation of doing things in stages. Gina.
And I think that proves that kids need to be in school. I just want to capitalize on it. That's the point. So those 4 days of being in school, I think protects them more than it does outside of school. And that's the point I was trying to get at.
So as far as the confusion to parents, I think I've suggested a couple of times that when a kid tests positive, that we send send home a letter with our protocol on it on returning. I think that I suggest that even before we got rid of the negative testing, that if somebody reports to us that they have COVID, that we should be sending a letter stating that this is your return date if you do not have any more symptoms. And I think that could avoid some confusion to one of the points that are listed on here.
Yeah, well,
And that would help.
the problem is that the DOH is sending their own letters.
I understand that. They do that with my job too, but we still have 14 days. So it's always subjected to where you're going and where you're traveling, with different rules. So we can still do that as proactive and kids won't show up on the 10th day.
I just got confused by what you said because you were talking about being testing positive. That's not what's presented to us tonight.
I'm sorry. When they were quarantined. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I meant when they're quarantined. Thank you for correcting it.
Well, thank you for clarifying it. I'm really confused.
Do you want to see if you have I gave you a recommendation. Do you want to see if
I'll
you
make
have
a,
some
I'll
other
make a motion on the
table?
recommendation.
All right, Mr. Pacini made the motion. Is there a second? Mr. Parker?
I don't see Mr. Parker.
I saw him raise his hand. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none. All in favor of the recommendation with regard to quarantine for
Reducing the
people
quarantine.
in close contact or travelers, to reduce it from 14 days to 10 days. So all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, I see 4 yes and all opposed. 3 opposed.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see all the hands for the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the 4 in favor, Ms. Aruda, Mr. Parker, Mr. Pacini, and Ms. Hayes. The 3 opposed, Ms. Felice, Mr. Trent, and Ms. Ancona.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. The next item, as the board knows, the winter sports season started on January 4th for low to moderate risk sports. High-risk sports have been recently added to this shortened winter season, provided our high-risk athletes and coaches are tested weekly for COVID-19. The next item for discussion is an agreement with the Suffolk County Department of Health, so districts may operate under its Emergency Medical Service, LSL, which is a limited service laboratory for the purpose of conducting these weekly COVID-19 testing. The county would then provide test kits at no cost to the district, and the district would organize and implement the testing under the guidance of our school physician, Dr. Donatelli. I offer this for the board's discussion and action.
Could you just clarify, please? Has Dr. Donatelli reviewed this and agreed to be the
Yes,
director of the program?
yes.
Okay.
In fact,
And-
we need Dr. Donatelli to order the tests.
Okay. And are these tests like the ones that are being distributed now for home use?
I believe they
something
are the
different?
same. They are the Binix Now tests that were purchased by the state, and the Department of Health gets them from the state. There's the same testing that the state was using for the mandatory testing in the zone clusters. And my understanding is there is a home version of it now that one can purchase and administer and read themselves.
And does the district liability insurance policy cover this?
Yes, it does cover it for our students and our staff. Would not cover it for, so to speak, if we were to start testing people outside the district.
But right now, this proposal or this recommendation you're making is only in connection with these sports and
Correct.
the students and the coaches.
Students and the coaches, yes.
Mr. Trent,
So, Dr. Johnny, the Suffolk County Department of Health, you have a document attached to the folder about the resumption of high-risk sports and activities with the blue seal at the top. Is this going to be followed in our district? Their guidelines?
Yeah, which document are you referring to? Mr.
Sorry, yeah. So the new step.
Yeah, do you know which tag it is I have here? So I could just open it up. I think I have it. Yep, I have it.
So
Yeah.
is
Yes, absolutely.
So now, I can imagine if we approve this tonight, the students will be playing basketball and all the close contact sports, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So the plan, as I talked about in the executive session, the plan prohibits that. So I feel,
I don't think it does, Mr. Trent. I think the plan permits it. In fact, our phase-in reopening is already happening, but not in terms of competitive sports. So I believe it does permit. I think our plan does permit it because our plan refers to guidance from the county and state officials, and this is that guidance.
but it says that when it comes to drills and practicing, you must have 6 feet apart.
Are you talking about the soft rollout plan?
The reopening plan that
Yeah, the attachment, though, you know what I'm talking about? The second reopening that we approved with regard to athletics.
yeah, it should be in the back of the reopening plan.
I would have to look at that, but this document would allow us to obviously go to competitive sports. I mean, those are the high risk sports: wrestling, basketball. Obviously, you can't wrestle or play basketball 6 feet apart. You can drill 6 feet apart to some extent, but you can't participate.
It talks about the shadow drills but I just wanted to make sure that we don't have things that contradict each other. You know, if the plan says no, but this, which is, I guess this is policy now, this document in the folder.
Well, the reopening, the phase-in plan refers to the after-school activities that we were doing to softly get kids back into participating because they've been out since March.
Yeah.
This is different. This is the athletic program.
Okay. Which has not started yet.
No, low have started. We started with track, bowling, and swimming January. What's the date? It's on there. And we just started. February 1st was in high risk sports.
High risk was the first day. First practice was today.
Yeah. Because of that.
so this is practice that's going on right now. It's not like competition with another school.
Right. I think our first competition for high risk is Monday.
Yeah, first basketball game is the 8th, which I believe is Monday.
Ms. Felice?
Madam Chair, I believe you already covered the insurance question. I had that question as well. Maybe legal could weigh in on that. And also, legal, I know, provided us a memo, but if you could just state on the record that the policies that we have in place and the new guidelines that have been disseminated will be consistent with one another. And then my final question is spectators to these sports. Where I don't see where it addresses spectators unless I missed it.
No, it does not address spectators. At the current time, the county athletic directors and I believe council may have as well have agreed not to have spectators at this point. simply because during this first rollout, it's going to be a little challenging. And prior to having spectators come, we'd like to get a smooth transition to the rollout. I believe the look back, or they're going to revisit it in March in terms of spectators. But right now, there would be no spectators at these activities.
And you're prepared to manage limiting, restricting spectators from football, basketball, volleyball?
Yeah, we will need to be, sure. Listen, it's easier to have none than it is to have some. And I think it's a good idea during the initial rollout to start with no spectators, so we can transition smoothly into competitive athletics.
Okay.
I see Ms. Aruda has her hand up. Ms. Hayes, I don't know if you saw it.
Oh. Yes, Ms. Aruda, thank you.
I know that when we initially talked about this being a possibility, we spoke about the cameras. Is that something that's going to be a reality? Obviously, it is hard on parents not to be able to watch their children play. So I'm hoping maybe we can work something out, whether it be with our staff or even our students, that somehow we can live stream these games. I know my child who does play a sport, and legal would have to weigh in on this. Because spectators are limited to only one, that is one of the things that we're able to do is live stream so that you can see the games. So maybe legal can give us some input onto that, but if that's something that we could do, I definitely think, put a lot of smiles on moms and dads' faces to be able to see their babies play.
Yeah, we're planning to live stream the games. Currently, the broadcasting class has been working, and I think they even live streamed some track events through Facebook Live. So that is our plan to take care of the games at this point.
Okay, maybe we can, let that, let the community know, something to bring us all together.
Sure.
Yeah, so live streaming is permissible. We always recommend that you take, precautions or follow the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act with respect to your directory information and students who may have opted out of directory information concerning the display of students on video, but it is permissible. I know it's done throughout other school districts as well.
Mr. Pacini, did you have a question?
No, never mind. Thank you.
I just wanted to circle back, if I may. I know Trustee Felice had asked council to confirm several, we can confirm that, we have we did discuss the items that are on your agenda this evening with the Suffolk County, and that these are in compliance with the Suffolk County guidelines. These documents were prepared by Suffolk County, and they are in compliance with your high-risk sports for pursuant to the County Executive Malone's guidelines.
Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
are we only allowed to test students who are playing these sports or their coaches, or are we able to test, willing faculty or other willing students?
I can answer that. We will be permitted to test other faculty and staff as well with the high risk. That's not the plan, at least not at first, to do that, but we can certainly explore that once our plan is running smoothly.
Dr. Gianni, are you referring to with consent?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Trent, your question had to do with the testing under this athletic proposal, correct?
Yeah, but I guess I would extend that just to be in general, because we have the LSL.
Well, that's the other item, the memorandum of agreement to do testing in general. So
Well,
Well,
no, we would be permitted to test additional students and faculty under this this high risk MOA, with consent, provided we had the tests available to do that. The second MOA is regarding whether or not we go into the cluster initiative, which also would allow you to test others.
Mr. Puccini?
When you're talking about testing others beyond, under the high-risk sports situation, we're only talking about people who would come in proximity of the athletes and are part of the program, the athletics, correct?
No, it could actually be anybody in the district. It could be the low risk athletes. It could be faculty members.
But what I'm saying is it related to specific to athletics, or are we
No.
just feel like we
No,
want
it does not have to be related specific to athletics. That's not my understanding of it.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if we're getting tests for the purpose of the athletes, we're using them for that purpose, and we're not
Oh,
using
sure.
them.
We,
That's
we,
kind
we, we will be ordering the number that we need at first. And then if they are available and the transition is smooth, then we will order additionals for those who may want to be tested.
And then I thought I read it in the plan, but I don't have it in front of me because I don't have two computers right now. But what is the process or the protocol for a student who was within the last 3 months was COVID positive? Because there's a chance they'll still test positive. Is there a record on file that, they were positive before? So are they they should be excluded from the testing, correct?
Yeah, that's a good question. My guess is that they are excluded because anyone who tests positive is not required to get a test after 30 days. And I think it may be in the FAQ, but I'm sorry.
I was told it was, but I didn't read it myself. I spoke to an athletic director from a neighboring district, and we ran into each other. We had that discussion, and there was a provision that, if you have because you're gonna have the same problem with coaches and plenty of athletes who may have been, COVID positive in the last couple of months. So I just want to make sure that's clear, and we know who that is and whatnot.
Okay, I'll double back on that, but I'm pretty sure it's what you said, 30 days.
30 days,
sorry.
not 3 months. 30 days, I believe it is. Not 3 months.
No, it's 3. I'm sorry, it's 30. It is 3 months.
I would definitely look into that because I do believe it.
We will.
Okay.
Listen, my son who was COVID positive, it's 90 days. He's not supposed to get tested for 90 days by order of his doctors.
But under the athletic,
Make sure it crosses over with the athletics.
Yeah, just to confirm, but I know within 30 days, you can go back into quarantine even if you had COVID before. So I just, I don't want that. Listen, I would love it to be 3 months. I don't want to take anything from any of our athletes. I just want to make sure that, we're on the same page, whether it's 30 days or 3 months. But I do believe recently I have heard 30 days. So I just want to make sure that that is accurate information. So.
and I think that the 30 days did come up in the high-risk athletic information that you gave us.
Yeah, I think it was on the FAQ there. I'm trying to search for it as we talk, but okay. Any other questions?
We don't have it now. As long as it's clear as we're going before we start testing, because did we test these? Did we test the athletes who started today?
No, we haven't tested anybody. We have to order we just ordered the tests.
Yeah, so when is the testing going to start if the first game's in a week?
They got to be tested before the first game.
Okay, so it's not about practices, it's before the interaction with the neighboring schools.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So I just want to be clear that what is on the agenda tonight with respect to the high risk sports and this MOA, this is for approval to use the county's limited service laboratory license just for high risk sports and recreational activities. That's the scope of this agreement.
I just wanted to make sure that we're testing every student, right? It's not random with the high risk sports. So every,
I'm sorry. Yes, in the high risk, for this MOA, it's every high risk student and coach.
once a week, correct?
Once a week.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or think, are we ready for a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent to enter into the memorandum of agreement with Suffolk County Department of Health regarding testing for high-risk sports and recreational activities? Is that Ms. Ancona, you're making the motion?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And a second, Mr. Trent. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you all. The next and final item for discussion is another agreement with the Suffolk County Department of Health, permitting districts to operate again under the county's Emergency Medical Service, LSL, for the purpose of conducting mandatory testing in the event the district's identified by the state under the New York State Cluster Action Initiative. We have not heard much regarding Cluster Initiative, either from the governor's office or in the news, since it's widely believed that schools are safe when protocols are followed. However, it is still possible that mandatory testing resurfaces. So in order to keep our schools open for in-person learning, I'd like to have the necessary paperwork in place so we are prepared to do so. So similar to high-risk sport testing, the county would provide test kits at no cost to the district, and the district would organize and implement the testing under the guidance of our school physician. Depending upon the number of districts identified by the state, the county may be able to provide personnel to support as well. I know the board recalls that I, along with Mr. Briggs and some nurses, went out to visit Riverhead. The county was supporting Riverhead schools at that time, but they were only in 2 districts on the island. So the county indicates that they're able to support probably up to 3 districts with this initiative at one time. So it would depend upon, obviously, how many districts are identified and determine what type of support we do get from the Department of Health. I offer this item as well for the board's discussion and action. Mr. Trent.
Dr. Johnny, do you have a formal plan to test under this initiative?
Yes, we do. Actually, there's a very detailed how-to, step-by-step that was developed by the Suffolk County School Superintendents Association. We've actually done a run-through with it over at Burn Crits. Went very well. We've had our folks trained, and we are prepared to implement.
Can we include that in the reopening plan?
Pardon me?
Can we include that in the reopening plan?
I would certainly share it with the board, but I don't know if I want to include it in the reopening plan because something like that might change, quickly in terms of implementation.
I think that I just want the community to be able to have access to the plan.
Oh, okay. Well, let me look and see what it looks like and see if it's something that we can do in that regard. But it is available on other websites. Let me look and see what I could provide in terms of that. Access to plan. Okay. Any other questions?
I see none. So is there a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement with Suffolk County Department of Health with regard to the testing? And that's Ms. Felice making the motion. Ms. Ancona is seconded it. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Raise your hand. I see 7 hands raised, so it's unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you all. And that is all I have, ladies and gentlemen. I do appreciate you coming together for this special meeting, but I think you all will agree that this is important information that needed to be dealt with quickly.
And next week we'll be back on our regularly scheduled meetings with full agenda with trustee and advisory committee reports and all of that. Okay. Is there a motion? Mr. Trent, you're making a motion to adjourn? Okay, a second? Oh, who went first? Mr. Parker. All in favor of adjourning? It's a unanimously determined to adjourn the meeting. We'll see you back here next week.
Good night.
I don't-